Good morning, Sully.
What's happening, man?
First time I got to say that in the new year, man. You threw the Frankel curveball to me the other day.
I had to get some boarding in, man. Had to run up to the Poconos for a couple days.
Hey, man, good for you. You deserve it.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. I hadn't been in a couple years, so it was great to get away for a couple days and enjoy some great conditions. You normally don't see that good of conditions on the East Coast, so it was pretty sweet.
Especially this time of year, man. Obviously, there's been this cold snap, and things are frosty.
It's warmed up to 10 degrees, my phone's telling me. So.
Ooh. You know, I was thinking about that when you were talking about the Siegel Classic is going to be on with Prep and Middle Township. I live in Philadelphia. There's seagulls everywhere. And
Really?
I'm like, how do these guys take it? I mean, they're on the beach in the summer. It's 10 degrees. They're out here flying around. Savages, they're savages.
They are, man. So what's going on with high school wrestling, man? The quads are starting up today, so we're really getting into the grind of the regular season.
Yeah, a lot of big quads today, and we had some cancellations this week. Yesterday, I thought maybe we'd see Kingsway and Camden Catholic. We didn't get a chance to see that. I know myself and Frankel talked about that a little bit last week. Would have been great. Hopefully they reschedule it, but obviously they didn't wrestle. On Wednesday, so Cherokee and Eastern. Cherokee has had a big week. They beat Kingsway last Saturday. Then they beat Eastern on Wednesday. So two South Jersey Group 5 foes that they could potentially see again in the playoffs. They took care of them the first time around. So good for Cherokee. Today, got some interesting ones. If you're just talking about a straight-up dual meet, tonight at 6 p.m. at St. Augustine, the Hermits are going to be wrestling Don Bosco, which should be good. I know Tom McGurk will be there. You want to go way up North Jersey. I mean, by now it's probably too late, but the Newton Duels, Paulsboro is going to be there. They're the number 1 seed, and that is really going to be probably their toughest test of the season. South Plainfield's in there, Hanover Park, a couple very, very good teams. Really probably the best wrestling action public school-wise in the state today happens up there. So I'll be over at the Dan Trainer Duels. We're going to have Collingswood, Highland, Eastern, and then you cannot forget Hamilton, which will have Hamilton, Gateway, Rancocas Valley. I think Pennsville's also in there. A nice blend of teams as well.
Another cool duel going on is at Williamstown. You got Delsea, Pennsauken, and Oakrest heading over to Williamstown. So that's be a pretty neat dual meet. Quad.
Yeah, and Oakrest has, you're right, quads. I keep saying duels. Oakrest has some very, very some solid wrestlers. A guy like Kevon Berry is a guy I keep my eye on, see what happens with him. I know a couple of years ago he was at St. Joe. Really has a lot of athletic ability. I have, when you get down to it and you go through the season, there's 90-some high schools or however many we cover now. Especially with these individual wrestlers, you're more just looking to see how guys progress through the year. And there's certain names that stay on the tip of your tongue or in the back of your head. Kevon Berry's one of those. I want to see how he progresses this year for Oakrest. Pensauken's got a couple nice wrestlers. I believe Brahim Tyson is back there. Delsea, obviously, is as formidable as anybody for the most part on a routine basis. So, yeah, there's some nice wrestling going on all over the place, and that is kind of the beauty of January. Now we put, these weekends, we get some great matchups. And also during the weekdays, we get some great matchups too. But we've kind of taken a step back from the individual stuff, and we're moving forward to the team stuff.
Yeah, Mark, a couple of sleepers to keep your eye on. You mentioned Oakrest, a kid named Cameron Garcia. He took down Nick Leone of Egg Harbor Township to win that Marinelli. So he's off to a nice start in his senior year. And Egg Harbor Township, too, they lost a lot of talent from last year, but they got some pretty interesting wrestlers back. Kenzig won the MOW at the Marinelli. Cody Dix down there in the lower weight. So they got some pretty interesting guys to keep an eye on.
Yeah, not only did they lose their some of their best wrestlers, Sully, but they lost their coach. I mean, Mike Hazard, retired. So I was talking to Ralph Pallone, our buddy, the other day about this and the Holy Spirit coach, and he said he thinks they're very, very good from what he's seen. And I trust Ralph's opinion. He's a pretty straight shooter. So they've had some very, very good performances early in the season, and I think they're showing. It's a little bit like the softball program. I think they're showing they're kind of churning out people rather than take a major step back.
And Mark, you mentioned Ralph Pallone. He's got a couple of guys that I think can make a real nice run at states. They got the experience last year there when you're talking about Tim Fitzpatrick and Mike Wazen.
Yes, definitely. Fitzpatrick is going to be on the top of the playbill most nights that he's out on the mat. He's excellent. He's finished fourth in the Beast. And I spoke to Tim this week. You know, a crazy story, and I'll tell it as quickly as I can. I know we're running short on time here, but Tim Fitzpatrick wrestled at 120 as a sophomore, and after the Walter Woods tournament, at the beginning of the season, he lost in the final. And he was hospitalized and couldn't leave the hospital until he hit 145 pounds. Okay, he was wrestling at 120 in December. So he really had quite a scare. And ended up putting weight back on and wrestling at 145 later in the season. But I think that kind of woke him up to weight cutting, and doctors told him there was a chance with a low heart rate at that time. He wasn't eating enough. He was dehydrated. He could have gone to sleep and not woken up. You know, I mean, it
Wow.
could have been that serious. Yeah, so this is a kid that's overcome a lot. You look at his junior, senior year, he has put it together. He's determined. He's very confident. And just an excellent wrestler. The Beast of the East to him to finish fourth, a big deal, sure. But he didn't seem overjoyed when I talked to him about it. That's where he expected to be. So those are the kids you really want to put a dot by and look at when states roll around.
It's interesting, Mark, to see some of these kids every once in a while. You know, they'll be 120, 130 pounds as a sophomore, and then all of a sudden, you know, junior year, they're like 160, 171, and they really get strong. And it's kind of neat to see that. I remember when I was in high school, John Stout's brother, John Stout, obviously the coach of Southern Regional, his brother Brian went from like 135 to like 170 in 1 year. It was crazy. He had some kind of growth spurt, and I was like, man, this kid's a monster all of a sudden.
Yeah, you look at Andrew Clark, the kid we have, a sophomore at Collingswood, and I'll see him later today at the Dan Trainer Duels. I've seen him earlier this season as well. Andrew Clark was very, very good last year as a freshman. He was wrestling at 106. I'd say his walk-around weight was probably closer to 118, 120. Wrestled at 106. Hit a growth spurt. I mean, I think he's wrestling at 132 this year. And he's a monster. I mean, he's an excellent wrestler. He's been terrific. He's a kid that down the road you might see him on top of that podium by the time he's a senior. But he might do it at 160, 170 pounds. Keeps growing. He's got the genes for it. Start at 106, move up that many weight classes. Yeah, you're right. It's crazy to see these kids kind of jump around once they start to grow, put on some weight, understand their weight regimen, their training, and all that stuff.
Mark, before we let you go, what's on the agenda here for January? Anything the fans should know about coming up? Is it just kind of the grind of the quads, or anything at the top of your list for the next 3 or 4 weeks?
Well, there's always going to be good action, Sully. I think next weekend some of our top teams are going to be out of town. You're going to have Gateway, St. Augustine, Haddonfield, Camden Catholic. They're all going to be at the Virginia Duels down in my native Commonwealth. And then, there's also going to be Escape the Rock. It's going to have Collingswood, Paulsboro, and that's over in Pennsylvania. So some of the best, and I think Kingsway is also there. So next week's kind of a Friday and Saturday, kind of a weird time. But after that, things crank right back up. And, we'll be on top of it all, man.
Awesome, man. Good stuff. I'll let you get back to it. I know you got to head out to some matches this morning. We appreciate it, as always. We'll be talking a lot more wrestling here over the next couple of weeks. I know the wrestling fans are jonesing for some coverage, so we'll try to hook them up.
Absolutely, Sully. Have a good weekend, man.
Thanks, bud.
All right.
That was Mark Trible of the Courier-Post.